Good afternoon and welcome to St. Newsfile. I'm Samuel Frazier. Daniel Siemens will have a look at the weather coming up, but first let's check in with Brody Radcliffe. Brody, tell me about last night's Battle of Alberta.
Well, it was extremely ferocious, it was fierce, it was physical. We have a full rundown on the whole game, plus a little bit of an extra look into what could potentially be a golf season coming up. So why don't you stay tuned, we'll have that later on in the show.
Thanks, Brody. Daniel, a little chilly today. What kind of cool facts do you got for me?
Yeah, we complain about the weather. It's a little chilly for sure, but it's not as bad as minus 31 like it was in 1902. And the record high for today was actually in 1910, 18 degrees.
Thanks, Daniel. Now here's a look at today's top stories. There's some good news this week with vaccinations for COVID becoming more widespread, but COVID variant cases have been rising in the province. This might be a tipping point that Alberta doesn't need. Haley Carter joins us from the Kingston area, where many restaurant patios are now starting to open up. Haley, the more these people who are out and about, the more these seem to come up.
Well, Sam, in late January, Alberta's variant cases made up 3% of all active cases. But as of last week, the variant case made up 9% of all active cases in the province.
The weather is getting warmer and everyone is gearing up to have a drink and hang out with their friends. Restaurants have been getting busy the last couple of weekends and are only expected to get busier. But that could be concerning with the rise in COVID variant cases across the province, but some people feel like if you follow AHS guidelines, it should be fine.
You take precautions. We don't go as often to restaurants as we used to. When we do the mask and then take it off at the table, and as long as you're with people that you know or are married to, then I'm okay with it. But having said that, we don't go as often as we used to.
Honestly, I think it's just about finding that balance. Like we can't keep shutting down restaurants forever, because of the economy and everything. But we also have to keep in mind our healthcare workers and our frontline workers and, the increasing number of cases.
There's now a total of 136 in Alberta, and that has some public health officials concerned.
We have identified 65 new cases involving variants of concern. Over the last week, our R value province-wide was 1.07.
Dr. Dina Hinshaw also says Albertans need to follow public health guidelines to drive down the R value. R value is the rate in which people infect other people. So an R value of 1 would mean one person who is positive could potentially infect someone else.
Thanks, Haley. Haley Carter reporting from Kingston. In Alberta, there are currently 4,811 active cases. There are 255 hospitalizations within 42 in intensive care. Calgary hospitals, there are currently 86 hospitalizations. While more Albertans are getting the vaccine, more restrictions are expected to be lifted. The National Advisory Committee on Immunization expands its recommendation, clearing the use of the AstraZeneca vaccine for people who are older than 65. The NACI issued new advice Tuesday morning stating that the 2-dose viral vector vaccine can and should be given to seniors. Studies show that the AstraZeneca vaccine is safe and effective, particularly against severe COVID-19 disease and hospitalization in older adults, including those who are 80 and older. Canada is scheduled to receive 23.9 million doses of the vaccine, with the first 500,000 doses already being administered across the country. Spring is right around the corner. That also means the season of allergies for a lot of people. But during a pandemic, some of the allergic symptoms people can get can easily be mistaken for COVID-19. As Amy Ramsey reports, there are ways to distinguish between the two.
Like, you can't even go outside anymore with a stuffy nose without somebody thinking that you have COVID, right? So it's almost even uncomfortable to blow your nose in public. Like, you can even say to everyone around you, I have allergies, but are they going to believe you? Probably not.
The sun we've had over the past few days is causing a big snowmelt, and that can be a big trigger for people's allergies. Allergy symptoms like runny, stuffy noses look similar to COVID-19 symptoms. It can be very difficult to tell the two apart from each other. Some people with allergies triggered in the season are finding it can be difficult to manage their symptoms, making it uncomfortable for them to go into public.
but it's also caused me to miss work a couple of times because if you have one primary or secondary symptom of COVID, they immediately send you home for 10 days.
There are many different types of allergies, but a couple common allergies for this time of year is to pollen and snow mold. When the snow melts, it releases a mold into the air. A local pharmacist says there are ways to distinguish between the two.
Well, of course, you can always get the COVID test, right? And of course, if you want to try some drugs are good, and they help. Then, sometimes though you got to think about drugs always are going to help sometimes with cold symptoms as well. So, whether they're going to help with your, I think they'd be more helpful for your allergies though.
With COVID, you'll have a dry cough, but when it comes to allergies, sneezing is a very common symptom that you won't see with COVID. One way to prevent allergies is by getting a skin test. That way you know exactly what you're allergic to. Another way to help prevent allergies is by wearing your mask. That way pollen can't enter your respiratory system. For St. Newsfile, I'm Amy Ramsey.
There will be an increase in peace officer patrols in Calgary's LRT system. The stepped-up security is meant to help address social disorder. General Manager of Calgary's Transportation Department, Doug Morgan, says that the patrol has gone from 30 to 60 officers per day. The combination of closure of other public spaces and the drop-in ride ships have continued to cause disorder. Funding for the additional patrols is coming from the city's CoFlex program. Pandemic's funding for the city received from the provincial and federal governments. A first-degree murder charge has been laid against a 19-year-old man after a teenage girl was stabbed to death. Police say they were called to Christ King's School shortly after 10 a.m., where a 17-year-old girl was purportedly stabbed in a classroom. On Tuesday, the girl was identified as Jennifer Winkler. During transportation of the victim, she died from her injuries. Police say the suspect knew each other. On Tuesday, police announced Dylan Putney, 19, is facing 1-count degree of murder. He remains in custody and is scheduled to appear in Edmonton court on Tuesday. A new private member bill that was proposed over the weekend could potentially raise the speed limits on divided highways in Alberta. Drivers may be able to move from 110 kilometers an hour to 120. And as Sarah Jones reports, many people have mixed feelings on this increase.
A new legislative bill could raise the speed limits on some highways outside urban areas in Alberta to 120 kilometers an hour. This increase would take place on highways 1, 2, 3, and highways 43 to Grand Prairie and 63 to Fort McMurray. This bill is being proposed by Spruce Grove's MLA Siri Turton, who believes this increase could potentially decrease the wide variance of speeds being driven on the highway, as most Alberta drivers are already going over the posted speed limit.
Anyone that goes down Highway 2 knows that if you ever go the speed limit, you're getting run over. There's cars constantly going past you. And so I just want to make sure that, like I said, we can kind of decrease that wide variance.
Alberta is following in the footsteps of some BC highways that raised speed limits to 120 in 2018. Fatal collisions increased by 118%, which caused the government there to revert some areas back to the original speed limit. This proposed increase has some Albertans concerned about their safety.
No, I don't think they should raise the speed limits because people already drive crazy on Highway 2 and our weather isn't really compatible with a higher speed limit in the winter because of snow and ice.
This bill is sparking conversation on our current speed limit, but it won't be looked at in the Register until about spring of 2021.
The biggest issue I have with passing it is just running out of time. So if it doesn't pass this spring, it'll most probably die in the order paper.
Until this bill is passed, Albertans are still obligated to drive at the posted speed limit. Either drive at the 110 or risk getting a hefty fine. For St. Newsfile, I'm Sarah Jones.
It feels like the corporate landscape in Calgary and across Alberta is transforming under our feet, and the community will look vastly different coming out of the pandemic than it did 12 months ago. Just yesterday, Shaw was acquired by Rogers for $26 billion. The $26 billion acquisition made on Monday puts an exclamation point on the rapid pace of change that is now unfolding. Leaders across Alberta have preached about the value of economic diversification for decades. Shaw was the embodiment of it, happening in the province over 50 years later.
It was always one of the big transactions that were out there, the big elephants. I thought it was going to be a while before this. I mean, I saw Shaw really try to get into the wireless side, and it seemed to me that it was almost like it was never going to happen. So I was shocked by it.
The deal requires shareholders to approve and is subject to other customary closing conditions. They also require approval from Canadian regulators. It is expected to close in the first half of 2022. Employees at Calgary's Coca-Cola plant walked off the job on Monday. Supposedly, the union representing the workers said the strike was in response to dispute over job security and concerns. Teamsters, local union of 987 of Alberta's representatives, some of 268 workers at the Coca-Cola refreshment plant in Calgary, members of the strike said they were ready to strike for as long as it takes. Teamster 987 spokesperson Brock Penson said the strike will likely affect the delivery of beverage production to Alberta's customers, including restaurants, grocery stores, and retail stores. In an email to Global News, Coca-Cola said it was disappointed the union had chosen to stop negotiating and go on strike. Warm weather is upon us, and many green thumbs are eager to get outside and get back to work in their gardens. But despite the eagerness, it's still mid-March, and as Calgarians know, we still may be in for a dump of snow. Garrett Steffen has the details on when you should get back to work in your garden.
As we embark on the season of spring, some people are starting to get excited about warmer weather and days spent working in their garden. Last year saw a rise in gardening supply sales due to COVID-19, and early into the season, it's looking like it will continue.
Very much so. There was a lot of new people that we have never seen before, a lot of new people, which is good for this industry, so it's great.
For one first-timer, gardening had been something they had wanted to try for a long time, and being home during COVID meant there was no better time to give it a shot.
So it was just more of a container gardening kind of an idea, so it was something that was easy, and I didn't have to invest a lot of time to get it going.
If you're thinking of trying your hand at growing flowers or produce to make a salad, you may want to hold off a few more weeks.
You shouldn't plant till at least after the May long weekend, because we can still get frost well into May, so it's a long way. I mean, last night was well below zero, so anything outside would have been toast.
As the saying goes, patience is a virtue. If you wait it out for a few more weeks, your efforts will reward you.
Oh my gosh, watching every day when I would get up in the morning and how quickly, all of a sudden there's a bloom or there's, a shoot or a flower or that kind of thing. And just to see how quickly everything came to be and knowing you grew food yourself, that was a lot of fun for me because I'd have no experience with that before.
It may be too soon to start planting your garden yet, but with April on the horizon, we'll soon find out if April showers bring May flowers. For St. News File, I'm Garrett Steffen.
Those are today's top stories. We'll have your full forecast after the break, but first, Daniel Siemens has a look at what's going on around Calgary this week.
Put on your best Sherlock Holmes impression and try to solve this murder case, a Zoom Live interactive experience running through until March 21st. The fee is $20. Join the Calgary Zoo for a pub quiz featuring questions that delve into all things green. Live quiz rounds and prizes make up this St. Paddy's Day celebration. Plastic Free YYC is meeting up to talk about personal care products and open conversation about natural house cleaners. It's free. Check out their website at plasticfreeyyc.com. Watch a 65-year-old piano tuner embark on a mission to transport a 100-year-old piano from London to the Indian Himalayas. You can watch for free on showpass.com/piano to Zansker. Power Glove will be in town March 20th, hosted at Dickens Bar. $22 gets you in to listen to a power metal band that does covers of classic video game theme songs. Hotels Live is bringing Dixie's Darlings to Calgary, a Dixie Chicks tribute band. Starting at $50 per person, rooms are limited to members of your household.
When you donate to the Salvation Army, you're not just donating a coat, you're donating another warm night for someone that needs it. When you donate to the Salvation Army, you're giving someone hope. So why wait? Give hope today.
Come and learn the fast-paced world of television production. Find your passion to write, shoot, edit, and direct news, sports, and dramatic productions. With industry-standard technology and the best instructors in the business, SAIT's television production program teaches you everything you need to know for a career in broadcasting. This is television production. Come and dare to be on air.
Well, it looks like spring is finally here in Canada, well, at least for the western portion of the country. Let's take a look at the western portion of the country. So just here in Van City, you can see just below, there's a low pressure system that's coming right up to Vancouver. They're going to get typical Vancouver spring weather with a few days of rain. We'll have a little bit more in Alberta, but overall, it's fairly mild throughout the province. Saskatchewan, it's a little chilly today, so just maybe you want to wear a parka. When you go to Winnipeg, they're going to get some snowfall coming into the evening for the eastern portion of the country. You can see in the Greater Toronto area, there's lots of clouds, rain clouds, snow clouds. They're going to have some gross weather for the next few days. Montreal is going to actually dodge it, and St. John's, lots of flurries continuously. Speaking of bad weather, why don't we talk about some good weather with the resorts?
Palm Springs is 21 degrees, nice sunny weather to go hit the greens. Barbados is 28 with some light rain. Cancun is 29, partially cloudy. Honolulu is 26 and raining. Orlando is piping hot, 32 degrees, partially cloudy. And in the desert Las Vegas, it's fairly mild at 17.
For Calgary today, your high is 8 degrees, mainly sunny. We got gusts at 15 kilometers an hour, and the barely any clouds that you see out there are clearing as it'll become -5 into your overnight. For the rest of the province, as I mentioned before, fairly mild temperatures throughout the whole province. There's no low pressure systems. There's no sneaky business coming on. We actually look like we're going to have some solid temperatures. The only outliers is Fort McMurray and Medicine Hat. When we look at the 5-day forecast, you can actually see what I'm talking about. Tomorrow, very exciting. 13 degrees. Thursday is a 15 degrees. And bleeding into the weekend, we're going to have some positive temperatures. And this is very similar across the board for all of the cities and towns in the province. The Rocky Mountains are fairly chilly though, so look out for that if you're planning to go on a ski trip. Let's take a look at the snow report.
A tad chillier on the slopes today with Lake Louisa snow. It's a solid 180 centimeters base with a high of 3 degrees and lots of clouds over the Banff area, so you might want to bundle up if you plan on going for a ski trip. You should have no problem with any of the runs as they are all open and groomed and packed. All the lifts are operational as well. Sunshine is 4 degrees, nice fresh powder as they've gotten a fresh snowfall. Base is 758 centimeters. It's partially cloudy as all the slopes today are. All the lifts are open and most of the runs. Mount Norquay is groomed and packed with a base of 127 centimeters. All the lifts and runs are operational, but still a tad chilly for a day to go skiing. Marmot has a solid 139 centimeters base with fresh powder from the recent snowfall, and it's expected to get a little more tonight. Castle Mountain has a base of 180 centimeters, and it looks like the best resort in the area for temperature and snow conditions with a high of 8 and spring snow.
Welcome back to SAIT News File. All this great weather has me excited for the sports coming up this week. The Blue Jays are taking on the Yankees tomorrow, and the Flames are taking on the Oilers tomorrow at 8 p.m. Brody Radcliffe joins us now to take a look at the latest highlights. What's going on?
Well, Sam, the fourth installment of the Battle of Alberta took place last night, but before we get into that game, this is what newly appointed head coach of the Calgary Flames, Daryl Sutter, said about Edmonton Oilers superstar Connor McDavid.
He's head and shoulders the best player in the league, so I don't think there's one player that stops Connor McDavid. It's a tough guy to stop.
And of course, it wouldn't be the Battle of Alberta without a little fisticuff action straight out of the gate. As Brett Ritchie and Jujhar Khaira got in a bit of a tilly, unfortunately for Khaira, bedtime came a little early as the centerman was knocked out. In the second, Connor McDavid coughs up the puck in the neutral zone right to Dylan Dubé, pointing in one to give the Flames early lead. Later in the frame, Mike Smith misplays the puck, which ends up costing the goaltender as the Flames score to take a commanding 3-1 lead heading into the third. Noah Hannafin ended up sniping in the third to secure the win. Well, down with 5 of the 10 battles of Alberta down the drain, there is still time for one of those two clubs to come out on top. Right now, the series is 3-2 for the Oilers. The next game is tomorrow here at the Saddle Dome. Jets and Habs now. Carey Price becomes the 6th goalie to start 700 games with just one club. First period, Habs forward Jesperi Kotkaniemi makes a quick play, then receives a tic-tac-toe to bury one for the early lead. Second period, Jets trailing Kyle Connor walks in from the point and slides one 5-hole, shortening the lead. Then gets a little tricky with a try-it between the legs. End of the frame, Jets defenseman Neil Pionk had a bad turnover that gives Montreal the 3-1 lead into the third. The Jets were able to sink another one in the third, but it wasn't enough to get the win. Big win for the Habs goaltender Carey Price as he picks up a win in his 700th game. The Jets are currently 4 points back of the Leafs for top spot in the North Division. The hockey community has suffered quite a huge loss as a young player from Russia has died after getting hit in the head with a puck. Timur Fetsudinov needed a miracle to help him after the hospital he was staying at had insufficient access to life-saving procedures needed to save him. Medical officers were unsure to move him to another facility with injuries like a damaged carotid artery, a fractured temporal bone, and to alleviate a cerebral hemorrhage. The 2021 Home Hardware Canadian Mixed Doubles Tournament is preparing to get underway in a couple of days. The tournament will be held in Calgary's curling bubble, otherwise known as Winsport Olympic Plaza, with games set to start on Tuesday. Tensions will be high as each team will be placing for the $50,000 grand prize. A total of 35 teams will be competing with a chance at representing the country at an international level. And spring has finally sprung, and golfers across Calgary are excited to finally get back on the links. With the consistently high temperatures that the city has been seeing, many golf courses are on pace to open early. Zach DeGurnis has more.
Golfers are already getting their swings in, as the season is right around the corner. A lack of snowfall in January and February helped with the golf courses getting an early start.
We'll probably open earlier than normal, so average for us is about April 18th, and we're already earmarking closer to the beginning of April.
This is always an exciting time for golfers, especially during the pandemic, when golf is one of the only sports people are allowed to play.
Yeah, I'm definitely excited to get back golfing, and yeah, I've been enjoying the nice weather, so I'm itching to get out.
Last season, the nearly 50 courses in Calgary saw a huge increase in golfers and are expecting to see another rise this season. Course staff are preparing as quickly as possible to allow the golfers an extended season.
This is always an exciting time of year when the weather starts to get better and the frost starts to come out of the ground. You know, one of the best smells you can have is when the first time that we actually do cut the grass, and there is something exciting about that.
It was estimated that there are around 6 million golfers in Canada, and $20 billion a year is generated through the Canadian golf industry.
Driving ranges are expected to open as early as this week, which gives golfers a lot of time to practice before the course is fully open. For State Newsfile, I'm Zach Diggernis.
Heading into spring training action, Blue Jays and Tigers battling out in Lakeland, Florida. Jays outfielder Jonathan Davis cranked one right off the bat to give the Jays an early lead. Jays pitcher Hyunjin Ryu was also going off on the plate throughout his 4 innings, striking out 4 batters. The Tigers look to be struggling against Ryu, barely making it to base during the game. The Tigers are now 7-7 in Grapefruit League play. The Jays are currently 8-6 and 2 points back of first in the Grapefruit League. They are currently playing the Phillies and are slugging them 13-3 at the 7th inning stretch. Los Angeles Lakers superstar LeBron James has become a partner of Fenway Sports Group. Along with longtime friend and business partner Maverick Carter, the duo now become the first black owners with FSG. Both own undisclosed amounts of ownership shares with the group, but it was reported that James previously owned 2% of shares with Liverpool, who's also with FSG. Legendary QB Drew Brees has announced his next big move after football. Brees will be joining NBC as an anchor after a prestigious 20-year NFL career, including 15 years with the Saints. In his last year, Brees led the team to a 13-5 record this year, boasting them to the top of the NFC South Division before losing to the Super Bowl winning Buccaneers. Brees has one Super Bowl win under his belt, nicknamed Hurricane Drew because they won the championship right after Katrina tore through New Orleans. It is undetermined when Brees will join the NBC team. And that's all for sports.
Thanks, Brody. That was a great lineup tonight. We're going to have to check in tomorrow and see what's happening with the action. Coming up after this break, we're going to go behind the scenes with Stars Air Ambulance.
Hey, I'm Freddy the Ferret, and I'd like to sing a little song about my brothers and sisters. It's not just cats and dogs that need a home. There's furry little ferrets that are all alone that could use someone just like you. So check out ferrets.ca. Don't delay, we need a home today. That's ferrets.ca.
Come and learn the breaking world of broadcast news. Find your passion to investigate, write, shoot, edit, and deliver the stories of the day. SAIT's broadcast news program teaches you everything you need to know for a career in radio and television. Become the next great anchor, reporter, or personality using industry standard technology alongside qualified instructors with years of experience. This is Broadcast News. Come and dare to be on air.
Every day, Stars Air Ambulance dispatchers receive an average of 40 emergency calls. But what happens between then and now? Do the helicopters just disappear? McCallum
is the current pressure.
The Stars Air Ambulance crew members work 12-hour shifts dealing with high-pressure, life-or-death situations. From the moment they get a call, there are many procedures that must be done.
When we receive a call, we would notify the helicopter crew that there's a mission ongoing, and then depending on the type of call, we may build a consultation between physicians and other stakeholders, or we may go through a decision-making process about whether the helicopter will launch early or wait for an update from EMS.
Once the emergency call is properly assessed, the crew prepares for medevac.
We want to make sure that the aircraft is all plugged in, all the equipment is charging, that we have enough oxygen, all the medications are checked for expiry and presence, and make sure there's lots of deep cleaning of the aircraft to make sure that we are safe and our patients are safe.
We first check the weather primarily, and then it's a yes or no decision based solely on that. If it's good to go, like today, it's a bright blue sunny day, we'll basically accept for weather. So we have a computer and computer programs that allow us to do that.
We'll also look at where the call is to and whether there's any other logistics that we need to sort out before we head out the door. You know, for our fuel or other stops, you know, maybe for blood for the patient and stuff like that.
For SAIT News File, I'm Chloe McCallum.
Well, Daniel, that's pretty interesting with those helicopters. I personally would be pretty afraid to get up in there. How about you?
Totally. Well, I think it's actually pretty cool. I'm glad that we have those guys looking out for us throughout the province.
Yeah, looking over like a guardian angel. Well, we're coming up on the end of our SAIT News File. We had a great lineup today. Join us for our next SAIT News File this coming Thursday. Take care, everyone.